How's it going? Happy, what is it? Wednesday. Feels like I forget every single week what day it is, but a happy Wednesday. Not a great market close for Tesla, down 4.5%. I got the ticker down there in the aftermarket. But I got with us a very special guest. You guys have long been waiting for this interview or discussion or live stream together. Let me know in the chat if my audio is coming in clear. Okay. I got Tesla economist Lee here with us. Lee, thanks for joining us. A lot of people love your channel. Thanks so much for taking the time and spending a couple minutes with us. And spending a couple minutes with
Oh,
us.
sorry, I got it.
You might have to mute yourself on a couple other tabs there, or just turn off the YouTube.
Okay.
All good.
Okay, my bad. Okay, we're good. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. How's it going, Lee?
Good. Yeah, we're good. Yeah, except for 4.5% down, but that's all right. We'll see.
Yes,
These things.
it's awesome. It's really funny because it's so recognize your voice, and then I see your face. It's awesome to finally put two and two together. And to
Yeah.
do you plan on putting yourself more into video? I saw your recent video. You had yourself in there with
Yeah.
your Tesla and all that. Do you plan on doing more?
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot easier not having to make all the footage each time. So we'll see how that goes. But also just for things like this to get myself out there more and networking with people like you and talking with other like-minded people that I'm looking forward to, which now I have that opportunity to do. So I'm looking forward to all this. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And yeah, if you haven't, if anyone's listening and you haven't already seen Tesla Economist YouTube channel, which I find it hard to believe that you haven't, go subscribe to Lee's channel. It's awesome content he puts out. What I really appreciate about you, Lee, and your content is how fundamental driven it is, how technology driven it is. I think what sometimes was lacking for a large portion was kind of that chasm between layman understanding and more of an engineer's background. I'm not sure if you're an engineer. If you want to fill us in on some of your background behind how you know so much, like how are you able to decipher a lot of this text jargon, and just a little bit about yourself and your channel in the past year.
Sure. I mean, engineering wise, I guess it's like software engineering would be the closest thing I have to that, which I guess is somewhat helpful, of course. And it was mainly web development, like cloud computing and e-commerce. But also, like I used to think back first principles back then as well, just making everything as simple as you can for the visitor and the experience. But I was brought up in a business-minded family. My dad started his business when I was like 1 or 2. He was an MBA. And it was always like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Not what do you want to be. So I've always been in business my entire life, in e-commerce, basically. I got into that quite early. My dad had a technology company, computers, software, and he was an engineer as well. He was an electrical engineer. So yeah, I was brought up in that kind of household. So it came in early, I had computers at an early age and just brought up with them. And hence why I probably went into the internet as a business. I did a degree in business as well. And I started a consultancy company while I was in there. And even at 19, I was earning $100 an hour just doing consulting on SEO back then, which in 999, it was pretty rare anyone doing that.
Hmm.
And then I just jumped out of university straight into consulting and then doing my own stuff.
That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I always figured that you'd have some sort of a tech background because just with the amount of jargon around battery tech and manufacturing process that you're able to kind of dumb down for people like me who are who are a little bit more or a little bit less technologically inclined, let's say. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, and it's been a wild month or month and a half now at this point. I'll pull up Weeble here so we can analyze it a little bit together, but crazy couple of weeks here for Tesla, running all the way up to 1,250 bucks, and now it seemed like we're about to retest highs, and then all of a sudden we had a -5% day today again. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the recent kind of price action and specifically today as well.
Well, I mean, that initial run up to 1250, it was all spurred just from that Hertz deal mainly, which, as Elon even said, it was like, we don't have an issue selling any cars, and it didn't really matter if we had another 100,000 orders or not. But I guess it was confidence, people seeing that Hertz believe in Tesla so much as well. And it's a huge order, to get me wrong, and likely to be recurring as well. I mean, I think it's great, but probably overreacted. And then, of course, Elon selling his shares just gave us an extra dip, and I made the most of that, and I think you did too. But now, Omicron coming into the States, we can't really control these macro events so much, and it's always out of our hands. But I guess we'll see how it plays, and then maybe some more dips coming up.
Yeah, it seems like macro, and I saw some Twitter threads today talking about, hey, well, if we're dipping based on this variant or we're dipping based on lockdowns and stuff, why aren't stay at home names pumping up yet? And I think it's important to realize still that whenever we have macro shock like this, which it's debatable whether or not it's even going to be a long term thing to even talk about because variants are going to pop up every single month probably. But if data shows that this is normal, the first step in really this macro retrace is that money's pulled off the table, a hand over fist across the board. Investors and institutions don't really pick and choose and go, listen, if something big is about to happen, and everyone already has PTSD after the first COVID go around in March of last year,
Mm.
or March of I guess 2 years ago, crazy. And like the first thing that's going to happen is just going to be mass amounts of money coming off the table, and that's going to take your favorite names down with it, whether you like it or not. And ETFs are going to have a lot of outflows coming out. And the second step of that is okay, stay at home names like you talk about Zoom, or if you talk about stuff that really ramped up during the first COVID bump in 2020, then we can probably talk about pump ups again. So uh, considering all of this, and we don't have to get into COVID too much to be quite honest, where do you see kind of the dust settling here in the next, let's say, week, maybe a couple weeks, or do you think it's a longer term thing to kind of worry about?
Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, they're thinking that it's going to be similar to what happened initially when COVID happened, which was really a credit crunch. That was the issue. Like even Bitcoin was crashing and everything like that. It was people just needed cash. So the people now they might think it's going to happen like that again, and we're seeing it in the market. But there's plenty of cash out there now. I mean, we've been printing and printing and printing. So it's probably not going to be the same scenario. But I mean, it's fickle always. People overreact, the market overreacts, they think the worst, and you never know what's going to happen. But usually in these events, I try and find the bottom and try and take the opportunity and probably buy some calls, I'd say.
Yeah. The problem is volatility is really high as well during times like this, right? And finding the balance of like, okay, if your stock has the risk of falling another 5% for the next couple of days, and I'm not sure if Tesla does because it looks like Tesla does have good support at 1100 and then 1000 obviously being the whole number down low. Um, where do you see? And by the way, do you think Elon had sold any shares in the last couple of days here? I know we'll probably find out soon enough.
Yeah. So I mean, he was last I checked, he was only up to about 53% of his alleged sale, I think, and I'm not sure what he's filed with the SEC lately. Do you know what he's been filing lately? I haven't.
Yeah, I'll pull it
I,
up right now. The last time we heard from him in the Forum Forums was November 23rd. So we haven't heard
right.
from him since then.
Right. Okay. I mean, he has now sold enough shares to cover his tax to exercise his options, I
Mm,
would say. So, I mean, he says he was going to sell 10% of his holdings, but I mean,
mhm.
he didn't give us an actual time of when he'd do that.
Right.
Um, so, I mean, he's probably got enough to cover his tax and exercise his options. And then he might sell the other remaining half of whatever he's going to sell later on down the road, perhaps.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe because I mean he doesn't want too much volatility in the stock price himself either. And I was saying before he sold it, I'd saying it's likely he will spread out his sales and not just dump it all in the market at once because it would hurt the stock too much. CEOs don't want to do that. They want to have too volatile stock price. It's
Mm.
not good for the company. So and that's what he's doing. So maybe he's having a break now, but he's got enough for his options, and maybe he'll exercise them. So I guess we'll have to see really.
Do you have any well, I guess the problem with that issue might be that tax next year is going to be disproportionately higher, I think is what everyone's predicting with the new tax plan coming out for him. So would it not be advantageous for him to just finish everything this quarter?
Maybe I'm not sure. I mean, it gets quite complex, I suppose, and strategies. And then he's also saying that he's also going to retroactively pay his California tax as well, even though he now lives in Texas and doesn't have to.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's variables here,
Yeah, for sure.
but
I
he's going to be left with about $10 billion cash or so, roughly, after he's paid all his tax.
mhm.
And it just wonders. I mean, that's a lot of cash. I mean, I don't know. No one really has this much cash. Maybe in Saudi Arabia they do, but it's a lot of cash. You know,
Absolutely.
So it's not just going to sit in the bank. He's going to do something with this, and that's going to be interesting to see as well.
I already kind of have my guess as to what it is. Do you ever give a prediction what he's going to do with that cash? Please don't say
I think,
Doge,
yeah,
by the way.
I think Texas Institute of Technology and
Okay.
Science might have a thing. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I
yeah,
for me, like my guess is, and I think this is what we've kind of heard at least this week was, I think he's going to dump a large portion of that into SpaceX because obviously it needs the funding, and I guess
yeah.
just following suit with Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos, what do these guys do when they liquidate a large portion of the shares they you dump it into kind of space flow or space travel, right? And I think the report coming out this week, by the way, if you haven't heard, is that SpaceX needs cash, or kind of it was kind of an email from Elon to all SpaceX employees, essentially saying, "Hey, listen, we got to perform, we got to do well. There's a risk of bankruptcy here. I'm not sure how imminent that is, to be quite honest, but at least he's rallying the troops." And I think I've always had this hunch for the last, well, since shareholders day almost, I feel like, is that Elon has essentially shifted the majority, I would say, of his attention towards SpaceX, at least judging by his public comments, judging by
Mm,
his public tweets, and this is obviously could be totally off because I don't know the guy, I don't talk to him, but just judging by his public comments, it almost feels like almost everything, 80% is SpaceX oriented. And to be honest, that's probably fair because, as time does a number on all of us, we get older and we start thinking about, hey, if we're going to accomplish our big, hairy, audacious goals, we got to get going. And Tesla's not a baby anymore. Tesla's not at the
mm,
risk of being bankrupt like it was a couple years ago during the Model 3 ramp. Like Tesla is going to be fine as a company I mean, likely to execute on its vision. Do you see him potentially shifting into more and more SpaceX, whether it's formally
mm.
or informally?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that he said that in the event of a recession, it is possible to go bankrupt, right? But I mean, if he needed cash, then he could just IPO Starlink, surely, right?
Mm. Yes.
And but the roadmap for Tesla, I mean, I study it relentlessly. It's laid out. I mean, the roadmap is clearly there, and it just needs to be executed. He's got the great people doing it, and so I mean, he's done the hard part, the machine that makes the machine. He
Right.
slept on the factory floor, making sure it worked.
Hmm.
So maybe now he's focusing more time on SpaceX and wanting to concentrate on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like if he and maybe he wants to put some money in there, and he's got the money to do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, like Starlink. I mean, surely if he needed to raise money, then just IPO there. I couldn't see SpaceX going public personally. I don't think that would happen. I don't think it would merge with Tesla either.
Mm. I was as you just kind of read my mind. That was the next question I was going to ask you. And when you talk about Starlink, and I guess you're totally right, but I also feel like Elon doesn't want to go public. Well, he said this. He said as much as until revenue is more constant, right?
Sure, sure.
So probably end of next year. It seems like is kind of the going guess from insiders. But Company X, I was going to ask you about that. So obviously you're anti Company X happening.
Anti is a bit extreme, but
Sorry.
I'm I mean, I don't necessarily see the benefit in it, perhaps.
Okay.
If anything, maybe Boring Company would be the one I'd rather they merged with or
Mm,
purchased, acquired. Because I think the Boring Company is the necessary future with robo transportation,
mm,
and autonomous transportation. It's going to mean there are more cars on the road. And then people say, okay, there may be less because it's more efficient, etc. But
mhm,
transportation becomes cheaper. It's not just for people transporting, you're transporting goods as well.
mm.
And if suddenly goods are cheaper, then supply and demand, people order more goods, then there'll be more on the road. And if you're trying to fix traffic issues, then adding more cars on the road and more vehicles on the road is the opposite of what you need to do. So boring tunnels seems like the only solution around that.
Interesting. And so Company X, I guess, was the theory that Elon can conglomerate all of his
Mhm.
companies all together into one, and essentially just kind of. And I think one advantage of that would be obviously the fungibility of capital, be able to run capital. Let's say if Tesla is sitting on so much cash and doesn't need it, and
Mhm.
gigafactories only cost, let's say, 5 billion, and Tesla's sitting on 20. Like, let's move some over to SpaceX, and vice versa during times when SpaceX is printing cash. But I guess that comes in. I see some comments here about, and thank you, Christian, for the super chat. I see some comments about the amount of rules and regulations that something like that would have to follow, and antitrust laws that you talk about as well. I think, yeah, I mean, it would probably open up.
National security as well.
It would open SpaceX. Yeah, a lot of employees have clearance that they. Yeah, so but that is a good point, and I'm not sure if you've seen this interview from a former Tesla employee talking about. That being said, how much cross pollination occurs between SpaceX and Tesla and
Yeah,
so many
right.
companies, right? So if you
A
want
lot of,
to,
a lot of the SpaceX rocket scientists are helping with Tesla already, quite a lot more than we realized,
right.
which explains a lot of the technology we see.
Absolutely. It's like, and we talk about legacy auto for a second, like
Yeah.
how do you fight against the amount of engineering power?
They're not working with NASA. So
Yeah, that's a
we have
slight
extra
disadvantage.
advantage. It's amazing, like this pool of rocket scientists that we can have at our disposal whenever we need. you know.
Honestly.
I think this money that Tesla has and they're saving up for, I think they have plans for anyway, to be honest. And it's for Tesla stuff, not necessary for SpaceX.
Mm,
I mean,
gotcha.
I know we're building up money and we're starting to get great profits now, and it's building up, but I think it is earmarked for potential investments in the future.
Interesting. Boring is very interesting to me. Uh, what would you say to the people that talk about obviously Boring's mission perhaps being contradictory to the amount of Tesla or to and you talked about this a little bit the amount of cars that Tesla in terms of unit numbers that Tesla would sell. Obviously, if Boring succeeds, you won't need as many cars on the road.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you are talking about public sort of transport, then yeah, that would basically be a better version of a bus. Instantly,
Mm,
you get from one side of Manhattan to another in what, maybe 5 minutes or something. I mean, think how much more time that gives everyone.
yeah. Time savings are massive, and I guess that goes into FSD as well. If Boring Company is going to succeed, FSD is going to be part of the solution on that. I'd love to hear your thesis around full self drive, around autonomy, robo taxis, and Tesla, and how much of that might be baked into Tesla stock right now, if any.
I mean, the Boring Company's tunnels, I mean, they are literally designed around the FSD anyway. I mean, the FSD just works perfectly in them already. I mean, there's so much less you have to worry about with people coming on the road or anything like that. You're just in a tunnel isolated by itself. So, I mean, obviously they complement each other. But then when you come out of the tunnel and go into public roads, I mean, just watching AI Day, it just like blew my mind what they were doing, but also gave me another realization of just how complicated this is and just how humans can do it so easily. But to make a robot do it, it
Hmm.
is just vastly complex. And then to think that the likes of GM, Blue Cruise, or whatever are are going to be able to do this with what they're doing is just ridiculous, really. Like
Yeah.
the level that Tesla are going to with the AI and all the stuff, like the simulations. It was just like, oh, okay, this is what's required to get to this level, and no one else is doing this or coming close.
Absolutely. And when we talk about risk and we talk about Boring Company, I think it's also important, we talk about how awesome Tesla is, how much we love Tesla as a company. It's equally as important to talk about perhaps the risks that might come with the execution level. One risk with the Boring Company that I'd love to hear your thoughts on is potentially with full self driving and with regulation around full self driving. Obviously, if Tesla can come close, I think, in my opinion, I think full self driving is also is almost asymptotic. Like you can get 99.9, and Elon talks about the march of nines.
Mm.
Now, what happens with obviously Tesla doesn't have lidar? What if, for example, regulators would come out and they would say, "Hey, for any full self driving car to be on the road, we need it," and let's say mandate having something like lidar as a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing that Mary Barra is saying that GM's going to have San Francisco, right? She's going to be allowed to do that with taxis and Waymo and Phoenix and stuff. Obviously they're using LiDAR. So they are getting through the regulation. I guess if it's that stage, then it's probably going to come down to lobbying. Tesla are going to have to really explain to everyone and show and prove the statistics. But they will have so much data to prove it all, more than anyone else, and just say, look, this is saving lives. This is reducing accidents. We have all the data here to prove it. I mean, you can't ignore it to an extent. And like I just bought a Tesla, as you know, right?
Yeah.
I got it last week, and I only have autopilot, but using that, I feel like confident in it already, even on autopilot. I know it's quite primitive compared to some of the FSD we're getting, and I do have the steering wheel ready to grab if I need, but I mean, I feel confident in it and I trust it. So give it a year or two more after, and especially after what we see they're going to add on AI Day, a couple more years from there. I mean, I'm going to feel absolutely fine with this thing driving itself. I don't think that's going to be an issue for people, or at least I don't feel like it is for me.
Do you think though, in terms of mandates from the from regulators, that that might be an issue moving forward about something like lidar or radar having to be a part of it versus vision
I
only?
mean, they could try, but Elon didn't seem too concerned about it.
Yeah. I know for like personally speaking, I use autopilot all the time. I used it as well during our summer road trip. I only had
You have a
one.
Tesla as well, Yashi?
Yeah, yeah. I also
Oh,
got a
you do? Oh,
yeah
cool.
Model 3. Yeah, had it for about got it actually last December. Actually, funny enough. So yeah, it's coming up to a year in a couple weeks here. I only had one phantom braking issue myself.
Right.
It was coming up. I was think it was coming under a bridge, and I think the shadow kind of got it. But that was
Yeah.
6 months ago, and I guess the benefit here is as Tesla updates and updates and updates, it's going to become less and less of an issue. But personally speaking, I can totally see how vision only can solve what it does because I see it all the time with
Mhm.
autopilot. It's just a matter of time. I think it's easy to get into this space of like, okay, it's going to happen in 6 months. Like FSD, 10.5 is out, great. 10,
Mhm.
11 is going to be full stack, and then we're done. I think it's going to be a continual process of reiteration. And as Elon even says, like FSD beta is not in Canada yet because there are different locale differences that you have to account for, and it's a whole different game. You
Yeah, I
know,
mean, it makes sense just to start on the US. It's the biggest market, and
yeah,
then eventually move out from other nations from there. Probably like Canada, is it's similar enough. But yeah, and sometimes they go too far with the FSD, and they have to come back a little bit and reiterate it all. And so it's they're just you got to test it out, right? And but they got so many beta testers doing it for them. You got customers testing your product for you, giving you the feedback. But I mean, seeing some of them, it just impresses me so much, the things these cars have to consider
mm,
and think about. And how we talk about it's going to be listening to sounds as well, and all these sorts of things. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. And there's just I don't think anyone else is even attempting level 5 really. They're all going with lidar because
yeah.
they well, look how hard it is to level 5. It's just not feasible, viable for anyone really.
I think scalability is definitely an issue with something like that. Now, I guess a rebuttal that they would say to that is like, hey, if they can prove lidar and HT maps, and prove that, I feel like the government is more willing to approve something like that a lot faster than saying just, hey, we're going by vision and we have our neural nets. Even if you show statistics, let's say, because you can say, hey, we got all the HT maps going, and it already works with Waymo, et cetera. I can see that potentially being like, Gary Black talks about this, where other full self-driving or robotaxi companies can get ahead of Tesla a little bit because they don't use approaches that take longer at the beginning. They can kind of get to that level 3, 4, let's say, before Tesla. Do you see that being an issue?
I mean, they will. I mean, they already are, but it's for one city. Like you're saying, there's no scalability there, and it's not going to be feasible really to scale up. Like it's just going to be too difficult. There's too many cities, too many roads. Whereas, like they say, you drop a Tesla anywhere, and it will just know where
Yeah,
and how to drive. You drive out of Phoenix in a Waymo, and it doesn't know what to do.
yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to get FSD beta myself, but I won't be holding my breath. As you, because you're also you're down under, right? So,
Yeah.
how long do you expect
I
FSD?
don't know. I don't know how long to wait here. Yeah, but we'll
I
see.
I'd probably add another year past when I get it. So, so
Yeah, yeah, that's usually the way. I mean, we don't even have Model Ys here for sale yet.
yeah, I know we actually have one Discord member that's been trying to buy a Model Y. We're waiting on it at least. And plaids, don't even get started on that yet. So, um, I'd love to hear, Lee, what you're most excited about in the near and long term with Tesla. There's so much to be excited about. I guess if you had to pick and choose near and long term, I guess I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
Well, okay, so near term, right now, I think this 2000 Model 3 today in Shanghai is pretty exciting.
Hmm.
I mean, you're obviously familiar with this rumor, right?
2000, yes. Well, I guess they kind of shot it down, didn't they?
Yeah. So, and you heard the executive the 500,000 target for the year as well,
Yes.
which then got taken back.
Yes.
Uh, and I'm going to try and go through the maths on that and just try and work out
Sure.
how likely that is for the 2000 to be likely. I mean, it was not like they would have flipped a switch suddenly and hit 2000. There would have been some ramping up along the way.
Hmm.
So getting these November numbers, which is probably less than a couple of weeks away, are just going to give us more information.
I was going to
But
say
I mean,
it's.
to be honest,
Sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say I think the November numbers are probably going to come on the 9th of December.
oh yeah,
So,
oh yeah, I bet. And but even way, to be honest, like the fact that before we had like the 1600 Model Ys a day, uh, that was a big enough deal for me. That blew my mind, and I thought, okay, time to buy some options.
mhm.
The fact that that is then backed up by a further 2000 Model 3s a day
Mm.
is just like it means I got to redo all my numbers and predictions. Really, I mean, this is just absolutely insane. But then it's 25% more a day Model 3s than Model Ys, and that factory is 25% bigger. The Model 3 factory is about 25% bigger than the Model Y factory.
Mm.
The alleged capacity we're initially told 200,000 Model Y, 250,000 Model 3,
Mhm.
25% more. So, the numbers stack up. Sure, they're not using gigapresses, so it's not as fast perhaps, and they're not saving 300 robots in the process that we know of anyway. So, it's possible. And we hear these rumors of like the 1600 Model Ys a day. And it seems like that turned out to be true. So it could be true. And if it is, then it's going to be good for our options, is all I can say.
Mm. And that's without Shanghai expanding, right? I think I saw some photos and videos of kind
Mm,
of another part of Shanghai expanding.
yeah.
Do you want to go into detail about that and what
Well,
speculation is?
it's phase three, they call it, right?
Yeah, phase three.
So we had phase one, and then phase two was complete. After phase two was complete, we got these 600 Model Ys, and now we got phase three. And only rumors of people wondering what this is. Some people say it might be recycling batteries or a
Mm.
battery factory. We don't know, and they seem quite coy about it all. But every time one of these phases seems to go up, then so does the production level. So it's good news either way. But I mean, when you then correlate it to what they're doing there, and then you put it into like Berlin or Texas,
Yeah,
they haven't really touched on the capacities much of these factories.
yeah.
We don't see that on the earnings reports.
Hmm.
It's to be announced or something. But if you start doing the math on that and thinking, oh, but also we've got structural battery packs, we've got front and rear die casts, another 300 robots saved there.
Mm.
Then what kind of capacity are these factories going to be? I mean, that's the big question, really.
Honestly, it is. And if what's your going guess on how big? Let's say, well, Texas is huge. Let's say Berlin is about to open. I think any week now is kind of the going rumor.
Yeah, like mid-December or something, right?
And
Yeah.
it's gonna take a year at least to get to full production capacity. Once is it like 1, 1.5, 2?
Elon said like it takes longer to ramp up than build the factories,
Yeah.
but Model Y took 12 months or so to build the factory in Shanghai, and we ramped up to capacity a couple of months ago already. Within 8 months it hit capacity,
Yeah.
but maybe we haven't hit capacity for Model Y yet in Shanghai even. So who knows? But I mean, I think it sounds like it's only going to be long range and performance models from these factories from Model Y for now, which implies probably from Berlin it's going to be 2170 batteries.
Mhm.
So, it's going to be battery constrained. Whereas in Shanghai they're using the LFP batteries,
Yeah.
which are not so constrained with CATL making a ton of them. So they don't have to worry about battery supply so much, which is why we got the standard range Model Y coming out of there.
Yeah.
But so that would also save them the number of 2170 batteries they're having to use in Shanghai from LG. I think they're supplying for them, which means they could then go to Texas. But I think that's why we're only going to be looking at these low numbers to start with. He's saying it's like, was it 1,000 a week?
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, and they got a lot more processes to learn, and it's advanced new factory with
Yeah.
think what they've learned from building their factory in Shanghai and well, two factories in Shanghai and running those for the last year or two, right? Everything they learned from Chinese manufacturing techniques, then to apply that in another two custom built factories, right?
Mhm.
Along with German auto engineering skills as well. I mean, there's these factories are going to be just like state of the art, obviously.
Yeah.
I just can't wait to see how they produce them and look forward to what's going to come off those lines. And what we're seeing so far just looks incredible with these 4680 structural battery packs. And it's going to be a whole, it's like Tesla 2.0 or 3.0, whatever up to now,
Yeah.
it's sure it's a Model Y, it looks the same,
Yeah.
and everything, but it's a different car from what's coming off Fremont.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so we're stuck with 2170 batteries until they can start ramping up the 4680s, really, which is not, obviously it's not easy. 4680 manufacturing production lines seem like it's really tough job, basically, just to get the lines going. I mean,
Yeah.
the R&D wasn't hard enough, like just getting these manufacturing lines up.
Mhm.
It just shows what a barrier to entry it's going to be for other people who want to compete on this level of battery.
Yeah, so the 4680s are kind of the end all be all for me is to, as soon as Tesla starts delivering 4680 cars, that's when I think the market will have to have a step change in their thesis about Tesla. Because at that point, whether or not obviously we're Tesla enthusiasts, I think the market still is discounting whether or not the fact that Tesla will be able to mass produce and deliver 4680 battery cells.
Mm.
Um, and you're right, like Fremont, when you talk about the Cato Road factory, and I'm not sure if you saw how many more hires that they're bringing in to the production line in Cato.
Mm.
It's massive to see how close we might be to that. Like we're not that far away from Austin. well, okay. Well, how about I ask you this: Austin or Berlin? Which one opens and starts delivering cars first?
um, well, we did hear Berlin announce like mid-December opening, and we haven't heard an announcement for Texas yet. But who knows what December can bring on the 9th? Who will see?
Yes,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I used to think it. Uh, yeah, I used to think it was Berlin. Then I used to think it was Texas, and I think now possibly Berlin. But you see, I think the difference is, I think Berlin's going to be using 2170 batteries, and Texas, like you said, Cato Road, they might start with 4680 batteries there with the Model Ys.
Yeah. So we talked about higher gross margin. Obviously, stuff coming out of Berlin is going to be ultra high. Well, I mean, I guess eventually it will be in perpetuity, but maybe in the beginning there might be some inefficiencies to deal with. If a Cybertruck, that leads us to Cybertruck and really opening up what I think my thesis around Cybertruck is as soon as Tesla starts delivering those, that's another step change to talk about in the perception of Tesla. I think there's a large amount of investors out there that are patiently waiting for the Cybertruck. They don't actually, believe it or not, think it's ever going to happen.
It's
And
too good to be true, though. It is. I mean, look at that thing. It's like it almost feels illegal to have something that cool.
I wonder how long it'll take to get road legal. What changes they'll have to make, but there's so much to look forward to, and I'm still not banking on Cybertruck in the first half of next year. I think probably towards the end of next year, probably when we start getting Cybertruck deliveries. Not sure if you have a different opinion on that than I.
Yeah, I mean, Tesla basically saying towards the end of next year, anyway, right?
Yeah,
I think Cybertruck can only really use 4680 batteries,
yeah,
so then this is not enough, and there's just so many orders for that truck. I mean, it's got to be what the most pre-ordered
yeah.
vehicle in history by now, right? Surely
Yeah, I think 1.5 million is the going guess of how many
we're up to
reservations.
1.5 now. Wow.
I
Gee.
think because I think what happens is they skip over lot numbers and the reservation
Yeah,
numbers, so no one
right.
essentially knows how much it is. But yeah, when we talk about 2170s, that's great. That's awesome. You talk about Model Y. I think that's going to be the best selling car, like Elon said, soon enough. 2023, I think, is his guess of best selling by unit volume. And we're already seeing that. Well, the Model Y is the fifth most best selling car in California already, right?
Mm.
And that's without Austin coming
Yeah.
out.
That's
So
before it becomes like this extra car, amazing, lighter weight, better handling,
yeah,
probably longer range, better performance.
yeah,
And that's why they also, whilst they also cannot make anywhere enough as well. I mean, if they made as much as the customers wanted to order, then obviously the sales would be even higher. I mean, this is just the not you say it's like the fifth best selling, but it's the fifth best selling as many they can make.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
I
Yeah,
mean, there's this huge waiting list on top of that.
yeah,
Um, oh yeah, it's going to be the best selling car. It's going to outsell
yeah.
the Corolla. It's and I mean, obviously there's going to be a standard range version for it to achieve that. But I think I mean we already have that standard range version, but I don't know because he we used to have the standard range version obviously in the States back in January.
Yeah. Those never got delivered though, I think. I was looking into it.
Really? They didn't?
No,
Really?
I don't think so. Well, I'm speaking as a Canadian, obviously, but we ordered the Model 3, got delivered, and literally a couple weeks after, all of a sudden Tesla's like, "Hey, model range or standard range Model Y," and we're like, "Damn, we should have bought this guy because we don't drive a lot, and we didn't want
Hmm.
to spend 80K on a Model Y." And then I think what happened was they announced it, and a couple weeks later they kind of took it off the site. I don't think they actually delivered any of them, to my
Oh, right.
knowledge. Yeah,
I mean, they must have been like, oh my gosh, the sales for the long range and the performance are enough. We don't need to sell this lower margin car.
yeah,
But I mean, the official story was the range just wasn't long enough, and Elon wasn't satisfied with the range that it was getting for not for the US market,
yeah.
which I can also believe as well. So perhaps it might be until they can improve the range a bit more for the US and maybe get up to 270, 280 for a standard range eventually of in time, perhaps. Maybe when it is their own in-house LFP batteries, maybe, which could be a while away. But in the meantime, I'm sure there'll be enough orders for 4680 battery versions.
Yeah, it's also funny because and I just had to do the calculation, 270 miles, so 434 kilometers, which is about
Oh, yeah, you're kilometers as well, like me.
yes,
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, yeah. I don't get miles, but I know 99% of our listeners will. 430 kilometers is about what the Model 3 gets today. I think 420 something, right? So, uh, but I guess if you couple that with the amount of haul that the Model Y might get, I think obviously you're able to store so much more into the back versus a Model 3.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
effectively maybe lower. What? By the way, how's your Model 3? How are you liking it? It's the first week that you had it, right?
I mean, I just like I can't believe it. Like it's just amazing. I just hold on to the steering wheel and I just point it where it wants to go, and it just goes there. Like it handles incredible. Did you have performance version as well?
No, I got the standard range plus.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The performance version. I mean, geez, this car is just so much fun. Like that instant torque, the power always there.
Yeah.
You know, an ice car, you put your foot down and it's got to drop down a gear or two first. It's
Mm,
just instant there. I mean, and that's just how it handles. Obviously there's a little tech associated with it too. The
mhm.
stereo, like the seats. I love the vegan leather.
Yeah,
Like it's
absolutely.
just like it is. I just can't. Like, I'm so impressed, basically, absolutely impressed, and I'm so glad I finally got to test the product that I invested in. For
Love
so
it.
long.
I love it. Yeah, it's funny because most people I was kind of the opposite way. I test drove first and I was like, something here, like I can't just listen to the media around Tesla and kind of considering that it's just a one trick pony, it's overhyped and all this stuff. But I know I agree. I mean, the first time I drove electric, it's a game changer. And it doesn't even have to be a Tesla. If you're listening to this, just go drive any electric car and you'll see how different it is from any internal combustion engine. It's instant acceleration,
Mm.
regen brakes are really fast. It's just it's like how a car should be driven almost is
But yeah,
kind
but
of
the single pedal driving, I mean,
single
I'm
pedal driving.
instantly
Yeah,
used to that. It
yeah,
was just that just makes so much sense. It's so much easier. Plus the regenerative side, so it's not using brake dust everywhere.
yeah.
But that is the Tesla's the only electric car I've driven. So, but I am planning on going and test driving every electric car for sale in
Nice,
here for some research, some marketing research, competitor market research.
sweet.
Unfortunately, we don't have any of the Chinese ones here, but we
Yes,
got it.
yeah,
We got the Audis
yeah.
and the MPs and stuff. There's a few I can still test drive, but I just want to know, like, is it how much of this is because it's Tesla that is amazing, or
Mm,
just electric vehicles, and just compare the two? Because I mean, it is just such a leap from what I was driving before, and
mm,
I'm just wondering, like, how much of it is Tesla and Elon's magic,
right.
and how much is the fact it's battery powered?
I would say, speaking of someone that we had a Nissan Leaf in the family before, and now driving a Tesla. We've driven a Bolt, but only a test drive. I would say a 50-50 almost. Like as soon as you make the switch from gas to electric, a lot of that stuff will come in, like single pedal driving and instant
Mm,
acceleration. But what I love about Tesla and love about Tesla cars is how inclusive the whole ecosystem is. It's kind of like having an Apple product, right? You don't really have to worry about anything. And this is pros and cons, but there's proprietary OEM products that if you have, they will work. They're good quality. The supercharger network, there's no way that we could have done our road trip.
mm,
The thing is like 1,200 kilometers round trip, which is a lot for me. I know it's probably not a lot for a lot of people listening, but without the supercharging network, there's no way that I would have ever wanted to, set foot. And we didn't even have to think. We didn't have to pre-plan. You put it into your nav, and it tells you what you're going to arrive with and suggests how long you have to wait. Don't wait the full 30 minutes. Just wait 12 and get going. Like the whole
right,
system. And when we had the Leaf, we had to pre-plan. We had to use a PlugShare app to figure out where we're going to stop. Like it's all
right,
the
yeah,
and it's kind of like, and I guess I say this kind of tongue in cheek, but it's like if I would give it to my parents, would they be able to use it without a manual or me explaining anything? And
mm,
if a product can't pass that test, then it's not as intuitive as it needs to be, I think.
mm.
Whereas, I think Teslas were. Um, but I guess shifting back into Berlin for a second, I saw a report about 30,000 vehicles for the first half of 2022. How much
Yeah.
credibility does that have? Is that good because it sets the
I
bar
mean,
low?
I think this was just going by 1,000 a week, and the first half of the year you get about almost 30 weeks or whatever, so 30,000 cars. So I think that's about all that comes down to. I mean, that's no ramping up basically. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm actually going to research this because I'm currently in the middle of doing my 2022 predictions of deliveries and profit and stuff. So I'm gonna have to research all that and work it out. Um, yeah, but I mean, also you got to factor in. I think you'd probably for Texas it might be easier. You're just trying to work out how many 4680 batteries are they going to have, and you're looking at the Cato Road rate, right?
Mhm.
And what we're at 10 gigawatt
10.
hours. Yeah, but I'm sure we've heard before. There's a capacity there for 20 gigawatts, right? When it's if they build up another line or something, right?
I I think
Um,
so. Well, are you referring to when Elon said they're gonna grow Fremont capacity by 50% or separate?
oh, no, 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 sorry, just the Cato overseas left, like
Oh,
adding
okay.
another line and
Yeah,
eventually.
I don't remember.
All that being heard sometime. Anyway, but I mean, 10 gigawatt hours. But and I think I don't know what their yields are up to now, but I mean, they've got to be what over 80%. You'd hope, probably higher. So yeah, I mean, that's probably the level we're at for Texas,
Mm,
and less than 2170 batteries as well. But they don't have a lot of 2170 batteries still, and
mm,
as we know, like it's not an efficient, scalable way. And this is my theory. Like so, Giga Nevada was only like a third the way built. It was through its full plan, right? They
mhm,
never fully. I think they got through it and they were like, okay, this is how many 2170 batteries we can build. We do some numbers, transitioning the whole world off fossil fuels. Hmm, we're not going to be able to make enough batteries with this factory. We need to find another way,
mm,
and that's probably when they started researching and looking at Maxwell technologies and like this dry battery electrode. The fact that the wet slurry technique took up so much room in the factory, and now we hear they can make like in one tenth, the footprint of the factory,
mm.
and at 10 times the speed. So some people say it's like 100 times basically as fast to make batteries because 1/10 and 10 times the speed, which is huge. That is just a massive thing. I mean, really, when you start thinking like the fact they can make batteries almost 100 times faster than the competition, then they have to though, because they these battery lines are so difficult to produce. Obviously, no one else is going to be able to do them. So it's kind of up to Tesla, really, as far as I can see, and they're the ones who have this mission of trying to convert us to get us off fossil fuels. Whereas, Xpeng or Neo, they have a mission of just trying to make profits.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I guess Tesla's in kind of I guess the almost privileged position to be able to now be able to do stuff like loss leaders to begin with, to do R&D and the amount of engineering power and having the brand really to attract that type of human capital to be able to work on something
Yeah.
so big. Um Now what about the 25,000 model? Do you think that's in the works for 2022? Does that go into your projections at all or not?
I think, well, I mean, Elon has said that it will not have the steering wheel or pedals, right? So if
Right.
that's true, we need FSD regulate out of regulation, and you need it working for the level 5 hit there. So
Mm,
there is that element. Also, I think it's going to likely have to be Tesla's LFP in-house batteries, which I'm thinking will be shown next year, maybe some Battery Day 2.0 or something,
mm,
which is the product. You asked me what I'm looking forward to short term and long term. Long term, it is Tesla's in-house LFP batteries.
okay.
Yeah. Like this is, I mean, Elon's even said, like, I think he said 70% of our vehicles will end up using these batteries. Sorry. I think it's probably more like 80% anyway. But
Mm,
um, I mean, I think, I mean, I was talking to Jordan from the Limiting Factor, and him and I think it's probably going to be down to something like $30 a kilowatt hour for these batteries.
wow.
And you're using iron cathodes, so
Mm,
don't have the scarcity issues with nickel. So you can just ramp up and ramp up and ramp up and build. Like it's a money printing machine. Okay, every single one of these batteries can be earmarked for something, like a product. It could be energy storage, it could be a power wall,
right.
it could be or a car, obviously. And if you want to get down to $25,000 price point, then the battery in this stage is like, it's going to be $2,500 or something like that, or something ridiculous, or even less, under $2,000. Then um, because it probably wouldn't need that big a battery. It's a compact car, it's lighter. Plus, there's the diminishing returns of the more dense the battery is, the fewer batteries you need, which means it's lighter, which means the fewer batteries you need. So
Mm,
it just this is the product that excites me, and it's also going to be, I think, what is going to start the energy business finally. I
mm,
mean, it's not doing much. We're not even seeing much in solar, but I mean, Elon says he is concentrating on the cars first, and he had to, and they almost went under. So he had to focus his time on that, and he's done a great job. And next, it's going to be energy, but I mean, you need the right batteries for it. So we're still going to have to wait. So
mm,
maybe 2022, we hopefully have some sort of battery day, and they announce these LFP batteries, probably
mm.
using a similar chemistry to 4680. So it's got to be tabless, because they got to make them so quickly and pump them out so fast. and there'll be more storage in the anodes with silicon. That is the product that I think is the most important thing in our transition.
Mm. And right now they buy LFPs from it's cattle, right?
Mm.
You said 25 bucks per kilowatt hour. Do you know how much
I think they're paying about $100 a kilowatt hour from
mm,
CATL. Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
And those
And
ones
I
are
think
well, sorry, go ahead.
and BYD Blade, the Blade batteries, I think they've got down to about $65 a kilowatt hour. I think they're
Mm.
basically the cheapest of LFP batteries. But I've seen mixed reviews whether they are more energy dense than the CATLs or not. So I'm not entirely sure about that yet.
Mm. And those are gonna I mean, LFP batteries are usually longer lasting. I think those were kind of put as the million mile battery, right? It kind of everyone
Yeah,
was talking
I mean,
about.
even 2 million maybe as well.
Well,
But also they have the thermal management isn't such a big deal on them either. They don't overheat so much. I mean, I've watched some videos where they pierce the batteries and you can see how quickly a nickel battery would just go up in flames.
mm,
Whereas the iron batteries, they just smoke, and there's actually not any fire. So that's also a big deal too,
mm.
especially with energy storage as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And by the way, offhand, do you know, and we know what happened with the Chevy Bolt, RIP. Were those NCA batteries?
So yeah, but it was pouch design batteries, which are the worst ones. Yeah.
Okay, so
So
it was more of the thermal management around it that kind of put it under, or was it the
yeah,
chemistry?
well, so I think it'd be more like there's the form factor, the fact they were using pouch. So you got pouch, prismatic, and then you got the cylindrical ones.
Mm,
And so Tesla have gone cylindrical for their 4680s, which is the reason for that is mainly because they modeled themselves on the bottling plants, and that was just the best way of manufacturing the quickest. Because I mean, there's no point doing something if they can't scale it up
right.
enough to replace, the transition. The mission is the number one thing. It's all about the mission.
Yeah.
So if this process doesn't work, it doesn't work. We have to find something else. And this way, I mean, we don't know how much Elon's really sandbagging about these batteries either. If it's 100 times faster they can produce them, it's huge. We just don't know. I mean, we hear projections, and we heard that next year we were supposed to get 100 gigawatt hours of 4680s, and now the latest update was we'd be at a run rate of 100 gigawatt hours by the end of next year, which is
Mhm.
which is still good. The fact it is happening, if it takes a year or two longer, if it comes to fruition,
Yeah.
it's almost like a miracle. Basically, if it comes to fruition, that is good enough.
Right. Yeah.
So be patient, a little bit patient. But we're not,
Absolutely.
we're not trading. We're not trying to sell our shares anytime soon. We're holding on for the long time.
That's always been the biggest problem with electric vehicle making has been the cost of batteries. Like I've been hearing it for years and years and years, and that's why the Nissan Leaf. I'm not sure how the Nissan Leaf. That kudos to them. They've done pretty well. Like they haven't sold in massive quantities, but they've quietly been kind of the leaders here in North America, at least of the early electric vehicle. In 2012, they
Yeah.
were selling vehicles. 2013, 14, 15. And, to my knowledge, there haven't been mass recalls. Like, yes, their batteries get
Mm.
really hot really fast. They added in more of a heat pump into the 2015 model. But, it's exciting because in 5 years, if what you're saying is correct and Tesla can ramp up and hopefully other you talk about legacy, we can talk about legacy auto here in a sec. Hopefully if they can piggyback off of this or be able to buy batteries off Tesla, probably not going to happen, but whatever it might be, we can really see that S curve adoption happening a lot, like exponential growth, a lot faster than people expect in the next couple of years.
I mean, uh, the Nissan haven't even exhausted their 200,000 tax credits yet either, though, which is surprising, right? And as far as I could tell, I rang up a Nissan dealer the other day in LA,
Mm,
and I was like, "Oh, well, how much do the Leaf start at?" And I think they're about $27,000. And then if you have the $7,500 tax credit, you're looking at under 20,000, which
mm.
is, there are alternative or cheap alternatives to electric cars, and people think, oh, the Chinese are going to come in with $25,000 cars and they'll be so cheap, everyone's going to want them. And it's like, well, there's already $20,000 electric cars right now from a brand that you are familiar with, who've been doing them for 10 years nearly.
Wow, so in New Zealand right now, you can buy 27,000 Leaf,
No,
27,000.
this is in the US.
Really? Because here it's about, I think last time I checked, it was about 40, well, Canadian dollars, right? But it
Mm,
was about 47 U was like a
right.
Leaf. Yeah. And
Yeah,
our
it's part of
rebates.
the same model. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, cars are probably a bit cheaper in the US anyway, right?
Yeah, well, I guess Canadians always get screwed like that, but
Not as
um,
bad as here, I tell
oh,
you.
for sure, yeah. Respectfully. But in that case, right, and we talk about LFPs, and we talk about 4680s, and we talk about how Tesla will not be, well, hopefully not be, well, it'll always be battery constrained, I should say, but hopefully less so in the next year. Um, Really, is it all just about execution? And if Tesla can execute, what is potentially like a price target or discounting back in terms of what Tesla might be worth in, let's say, a year's time when 4680s or LFPs are scaled up?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you got to think that they're going to be adding about 10% more margin onto every car with these cheaper batteries. I mean, we've heard people calculate that 4680s are going to be about $55 a kilowatt hour at the pack level. I mean, that's a huge saving when I think they're about $150 they're getting from Panasonic and LG per
Mm,
kilowatt hour. I mean, that's almost a third the price. And batteries being the main cost of the car, that's just all margin. And that margin all goes right to the end, right to the net profit after tax.
right.
So that's huge. But I mean, this is just for the cars that have the 4680 batteries. It's going to take a while until they all traverse and transfer to the 4680 batteries as well. I mean, we're still using 2170 batteries, probably for some time. So, but the fact that you just need to realize that, okay, then from now on, these cars will, they'll also have the front and rear die casts, etc., and all this as well. So you just factor in like, wow, this is just going to be such a high margin car. Also, on top of that, they're still raising prices. Okay, when you raise prices and you cut costs, the margins just keep on getting better and better. And when you also you covered your OPEX already, then these margins will go to the net profit, which means you just like see huge jumps in net profit.
Right.
And the market has not factored this in. Like judging by the PE ratios we're seeing already,
Hmm.
and like estimated roughly what Q4 might do. We're looking at if that was annualized, like a P ratio of around 100 already. And if you're going to double the profit, like just from improving margins and increasing prices, then that alone would jump it to a P ratio of 50, right? But we're not just doing that. We have these two huge factories that are going to, maybe quadruple the number of cars we're making too, all with this extra profit margin and economies of scale. And while OPEX remains relatively low,
Mm-hmm.
and you start doing these numbers, and like the company just looks like a bargain, really, at that stock price.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's all about execution, right? Yeah, and yes, we know there's going to be red tape, and we've seen it already. It's just really about Tesla going out and doing it. It's not like there's some theory in the lab right now. It's actually happening. There are 4680 battery cells packs out there. It's just a matter of them delivering it at this point. Um, so super exciting. So, and I know that on your channel, Tesla Economist, you have some targets. You have your bear, your kind of neutral, and then your bull target.
mm,
Is that for end of 2022? Um,
yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot all year. So
okay.
my biggest one was my 2025 one. I took every side of the business in, even the HVAC and well, obviously not robots because we didn't have them back then, but yeah, energy, and just tried to evaluate each side of what they could be worth potentially. But it feels so outdated now. I've got to redo them again. But recent, like especially after we've seen what's happening in China and how much they're ramping up there, and these margins and these prices going up, and the demand, so I mean, I think we're up like 20%. The prices are almost up 20% from the start of this year just for the Model Y.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like it still is a value product. It's just that before there wasn't enough demand, perhaps, so they had to start at a lower price point. But people are starting to realize,
Hmm.
wow, this is actually worth way more than what they're charging, and they're still charging less than the value it's adding relative to say a BMW, in my opinion. And that's not even including the fact that it costs so much less to own with the fuel and then the depreciation that doesn't seem to occur. Like it after 5 years cost of ownership, compare that to a BMW and what you get out of it comparatively, it's a bargain, really, just buying the products.
Right.
And more consumers are starting to realize this as well. So the demand keeps going up, and maybe the prices will keep going up and eventually come to some sort of price where it actually is at the value of the product offering. I mean, I've had BMW M3s, for example, and comparing this, and over here where I live, a BMW M3 is about 170, 180,000 New Zealand dollars, right?
Okay.
Whereas my Tesla was 100,000.
Mm.
It's almost half the price, and then then that BMW is going to cost a lot in fuel and a hell of a lot in depreciation.
Yeah.
This, my car, I think, is already worth like 10,000 more than I paid for it. I literally
Oh my god.
bought the last one in New Zealand, um, that they had an inventory, and now you've got to wait until March to get one, and that's if there even are any performance ones. So, which I don't think there are.
Hmm.
It's just standard range, because we actually have a standard range tax rebate at the moment here, but not on the performance,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
makes sense. No, it's true, and I guess right now, when marginal benefit equals marginal cost, you can continue to raise prices here. Um, but as obviously the mission is to grow the market, and to grow the market, yes, it's awesome for ASPs right now and seeing them climb and margins go up in the short term. In the long run, is I guess how and when is Tesla going to be able to bring the cost back down to where it was intended to be? Because or are they in the short
Yeah, I think maybe these are the prices for these cars, and they don't need to come down.
term?
But what they will do is offer different versions. So you'll have the standard range Model Y.
Yeah.
I think if and okay, eventually their supply will be so high, hopefully, and they can ramp up these 4680 batteries so much. And he's talking about 2 million Model Ys a year at least. He says he's going to beat. Elon says he's going to beat Corollas, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't say he's going to equal Corollas. Corollas about 2 million sales a year. So he says beat that. I mean, we don't know if he's beating it by a few or a million.
Right.
We
Right.
don't know. I think there is going to be this sweet spot of the Model Y,
Hmm.
eventually, in time, using their own in-house LFP batteries,
Hmm.
that with other efficiencies that come through, that they will be able to approach maybe 300 miles of range, perhaps in a Model Y.
Wow.
I have a lot of hope for their LFP batteries.
And that's the long
um,
range version, right?
well, I think this is going to be, I might call it a medium range at that time.
Okay.
Eventually, it may be 280 miles. Even that is pretty good. But around that, this must be a sweet spot. And if they're using their LFP batteries, it means they got their cost so low, and they have abundant supply of these batteries, hopefully. And obviously, all this other economies of scale that kick in, and the front and rear the front and rear die casts and things. So, and a price point might be around maybe $45,000 a year, $45,000 for the car, which is, remember, you got no fuel, you got
Yeah.
all these other savings. And by that stage as well, people who might have looked at buying a Tesla, they possibly looked at buying one secondhand,
Yeah.
that also used one, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, it looks really good, but I might buy a used one. They're like, oh, the used ones are the same price as the new ones. Oh, I may as well just buy a new one then.
I know.
And obviously, I'm going to appreciate, because like I've never bought a new car in my life. I
Uh-huh.
would always buy old ones, because I know, especially where I live, they depreciate so quickly. We have a lot of Japanese imports that are just so where they depreciate really quickly in Japan. They cost a lot to run in Japan after a certain while. So we get them imported over here. But if you buy a brand new one here that's New Zealand new, it costs a fortune, but depreciates as fast as the Japanese ones.
Mm.
So it is just a total write-off as soon as you drive out of that car dealership.
Yeah.
But there's no Tesla Japanese imports, luckily, and it's going to appreciate. And on top of that, obviously the software keeps up to date with what's going on. Like I've got like in my Mercedes, I got like a mini disc player in there.
Yeah.
That is technology that doesn't need to exist anymore,
Yeah.
but it's still in there. Whereas the Tesla will just update the software. Oh, a new version of Spotify or whatever, and there it is.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, and I even read some legacy autos talking about how you have to drive into their dealership to be able to update your car, right? Uh,
Over the hours you have to drive into the dealership for, yeah.
over the air in the parking lot of their
Yeah.
dealership. And actually, it's a good transition to legacy autos, and where you see, and I know you have a couple awesome videos around perhaps going short on some of these companies, or buying puts at least. What are your thoughts on which automakers, GM,
Yeah.
Ford?
I mean,
Um, yeah,
I've got to explain that it's not necessarily me trying to short them as a trade. It's really me trying to hedge myself for a potential recession is the main purpose of it.
okay,
Like when I buy my leaps as well, I'm not buying these for trades. I'm buying them for me to hedge today's prices for a time when I might be able to afford to buy these shares. So yeah, this isn't me necessarily betting against them, but at the same time, it's highly possible that they could suffer quite severely in the meantime. But my current favorite
mhm.
would probably be GM at the moment. Yeah,
And GM was up today, I think. I'm just gonna pull it up here.
really.
It was weird. We had a weird day in the market. I'll I'll pull it up on my side here, and you can't see it, so I'll just talk it out here. GM was up 33 basis points on the day, so if you want to call it flat, but Ford was up 2% on a day
Gee.
like today. I don't know how Ford seemed to have a 2% up day on a day when macro was bleeding as much as it was, but so it's kind of like a pairs trade. It sounds like too. It's like obviously being long Tesla, and then is it through puts? I'm guessing that you're going.
Yeah, but yeah, I wouldn't actually physically short something myself.
Makes sense.
And I don't like that exposure.
Yeah.
I want, like, a put would be, I mean, right now I'm at a stage in my life, I've got, I love my house, I love my job, I love my family, and I love how my Tesla shares have gone, but I don't need to be too greedy or anything. So just to like buy some insurance,
Mm,
essentially, on if there is a market crash. I mean, we buy insurance on our houses in case something happens, in case it catches fire. The market can basically catch fire in a sense. So, and you never know what could happen if interest rates rose and then suddenly I couldn't afford my mortgage. I just would like some insurance to cover me through some potential hard times. I actually had quite a hard time in the global financial crisis.
mm,
So obviously the financial crisis hit and everyone's houses were worth a lot less. I lost like 30% of my equity on that.
mm,
But it doesn't make any difference. I still had the same house before. As long as I didn't sell, you don't take the loss, right?
mhm,
But then on top of that, I also lost my business at the same time,
mm.
which was just a website company. But old Google changed their algorithms on you, and suddenly
Yeah.
everything was not ranking in Google anymore. So
Yeah.
that went up at the same time. And then, unfortunately, in Christchurch, where I live, there was an earthquake as well on top of that, which kind of destroyed the whole city,
Oh, wow.
which made it impossible for me to sell my house. So I had to go through all this, and it was tough, but I got through it. And my lesson learned now is just, and now I've rebuilt everything up again, and I'm really happy with what I've done. I had to restart new businesses, and those 80-hour, 100-hour weeks and stuff you got to do sometimes. But and I didn't have any money equity, because my equity to invest in the Tesla IPO, which hurt, because I had this liability of this house. So yeah, eventually I got out of it. I managed to sell my house in 2017 finally, after it was all rebuilt after the earthquake and stuff. But
Wow.
first thing I did was sign up trading account and buy some Tesla.
Wow. It's all by the way, thanks for sharing that. It's those kind of events, right, in our lives that kind of shape our future decisions, and for good or bad, right? It sounds like it's for the better here that it's good to have insurance, and I absolutely agree. Why don't you consider Tesla puts as insurance? Why do you think GM puts are better?
Yeah. I mean, I did consider that as well. That was actually some of my older videos actually did say I looked at Tesla puts as well. But I just think that in a recession, GM is going to have it worse.
Mm,
And then people say, but GM's going to be bailed out and stuff. Like last time,
yeah.
yeah, last time after they went bankrupt, they did go bankrupt first.
Right.
So okay, fine. If they go bankrupt, that's good for my puts then, right?
Mm.
And then if they get bailed out after that, then that's all right. I've already they've already gone bankrupt.
Wow, I'm just looking at it right now. GM in the 2008 crash went from as high as $37 in 2007,
Mhm.
end of 2007, all the way down to a dollar and
Yeah,
37 per share.
yeah.
Wow. Yes.
It's
Interesting.
like the other stocks I was looking at shorting was some of the casinos in Vegas, right? Sands and Wynn and MGM, right?
Mm,
In the GFC, gosh, I can't remember from the top of my head, but it was something ridiculous. They went like from $60 to $2 or something crazy, right?
right.
And actually, in the when COVID first came out, I did buy some puts. I think it was in MGM or Sands, and they didn't crash like I thought they would. I mean, it was just insurance again. Just I bought some insurance just in case similar scenario what happened. But yeah, I mean, I made like 50% or something on the options. But yeah, so it's hard to know if if the same thing will happen again to the same companies. But
Hmm.
you know, I've done analyses of Tesla in a recession, and seen how they can cope. And I think they're going to be fine. They can always reduce their prices. They have that buffer of a margin there, and the others don't. The others would possibly go under, which would just mean less competition for Tesla anyway. And also, if they can, depending on when said recession happens, if Tesla have their robotaxis by then I just and the compact, then they're good. I think either way. In fact, it's almost the opposite. In a recession, that it could even thrive, that business.
It's funny. I mean, I talk to people all the time that say like, you know, what exactly like what if a recession happens? You're obviously high growth. I think what's important to realize is like, you know, history doesn't always repeat itself, but history is usually a good indication. And
Mm.
in March 2020, like, you know, with talk about dramatic drops, that was a dramatic drop super fast in that month and a half
That
span.
was huge.
Tesla came out of that COVID with factory shutdowns, with, you know, just overall spending being lower. Talk about people not wanting to buy brand new cars. Like, why would you want to buy a brand new car in March, April of May? Actually, my dad did, but that's a different story. You know, but like that's the, I guess, quote unquote, worst time that you could possibly have for a new car automaker.
Mm.
And Tesla came out of that growing double digits,
Mm.
like easily. Came out, not only that, then they faced chip shortages, and we're seeing relative strength of Tesla comparatively to legacy when it comes to the chip
Mm.
problem, which I still think is played up a lot by legacy autos to bring the kind of the bar down of what needs to be delivered for them, and what Kathy Wood talks about with lowering
Right.
demand with internal combustion engines.
You think Kathy's right there? You believe?
Yes, when I think to when I talk with, and I know plural of anecdote is not data, but when I talk to my friends, and a lot of them being, you know, 25 to 30, uh, a lot of them are waiting for their next car to be an electric car, but they're not ready just yet. They're waiting for costs to come down. They're waiting for that Acura or that, you know, Toyota Camry. In one case, I have a buddy talking about how he wants to buy a Model 3 and now he's just complaining because its price is going up. But he's like, if this car can last me another 2 years, I'll have enough disposable income. I'll have my first property. Then I'll be able to buy a brand new car. Which I agree, you should probably buy a principal residence first if you can. So yes, you know, when it talks about, I think the younger generation, I think a lot of the younger generation are waiting for their first cars to be electric.
Mm.
And when you talk about the legacy auto, I think obviously you're going to have net new demand for internal combustion engine vehicles. It's not going to disappear overnight, but I think it is diminishing, and I think they are pushing on that narrative of, hey, listen, it's chip shortages. Whereas, you know, you see a lot of these cars in lots sitting there and kind of, and the dealers having to mark them down for them to even
Right.
get off. So
Right.
I think so, but I guess time will tell. That's the best thing with
I
investing.
mean, I think there's got to be an element of truth in there, right? I mean, everyone's saying electric is the future. At any generation now, it seems obvious. Um, I mean, my father-in-law, I told him to buy a Tesla, but he ended up buying a RAV4 hybrid,
Hmm.
and he has to wait like 8 months, I think, or 9 months for it to get here. So, I mean, there are shortages as well. But he's seen my Tesla now, and I think he's regretting it already, and I think he's going to cancel that order
Oh
or sell
no!
it
Wow.
and get it. Because yeah, they're amazing.
I had a friend, and by the way, it's so true what you just like, that networking effect. Like the reason why we bought our Model 3 is because my dad bought a
Yeah,
Model 3 first. And
right.
and yes, we had test driven one. It got me into Tesla, but I was like, I was investing in Tesla for them. But it was like, you know, and then I drove it. The more I drove it, the more I sat in, I was like, okay, I just need one as the next car.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but back to your point for a second about the hybrid. I've been actually talking with a friend, a buddy of mine, who is like, "Hey, I don't want to buy an electric just yet. I don't think I can afford it. I'm going to buy a hybrid." And I'm trying to explain to him, like, "Great, you can buy a hybrid, do whatever you want, but you realize you're essentially that battery is so small in there in terms of in terms of the hybrid battery, and you're still having to do all the maintenance of a gas car. Like, if you're gonna go electric, you might as well go fully electric because what you want to ditch is all the maintenance and the burden and gas really is what you want to ditch, but also the maintenance, right? Of having to do and with hybrids, like I guess it's a step in the right direction. I'm not sure why plug-in hybrids get so many you know, a lot of rebates as well. It doesn't really make much sense.
True.
But it's, you know, I think that education is not there yet in terms of a lot of consumers yet. Like they don't think electric cars other than Teslas, are as approachable as they can be as going to buy a Nissan Leaf.
And they all think Teslas are so expensive as well, you know. But you do the actual cost of ownership over 5 years, and they almost free, you know, not far off compared to
Depreciation. Yeah.
yeah,
And especially if it's a business expense, right? Obviously,
yeah.
I'm a realtor, so you know, I do a lot of driving.
Okay. Right.
And I'm not sure if you saw this actually. A really popular pop artist, Stevie Aoki, actually posted on Twitter yesterday. He's like a, and someone's gonna rail on me if I'm wrong. He's more of a EDM music DJ guy. He has like
Mm.
millions of followers and subscribers.
Sure.
He posted on social media yesterday him buying his mom a Model 3. And it's like, where else are people that are buying like millionaires, like deca millionaires, buying a
Mm.
$50,000 car and posting like they just bought their mom a $250,000 car, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yes, we get it. Like you're a deca millionaire, you can probably afford this like a million times over, but you're buying her this car and yet you're pumping it up so much because the product speaks for itself. It's not about the cost of the vehicle with Teslas. It's more of the brand almost.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Yeah, I mean, also, but this is not going to be enough, basically, is my conclusion anytime soon for people to transition. And if we have higher fuel prices, then ICE cars obviously can become more expensive. So I think, PHEV might be the necessary element to just transition us that much in the meantime, because people will still need some cars. If gas prices are so expensive, then, you can still get like up to, I think, 50 miles range on some of these PHEVs, and people will just have to plug them in every single night or when they get to work continually. I mean, it's not my favorite technology, but there just aren't enough electric cars. It's plain and simple. And
Mm,
Tesla are doing what they can, but even if they're up to 10 million a year by 2025, it's
right.
still.
Yeah. Uh, And on the battery issue, before I get into the fun question, I want to wrap it up with uh, solid state batteries. Thoughts on solid state? Do you think in a couple of years time with QuantumScape or Cattle Toyota talking about solid states, is that going to be a thing? Is that going to change the market?
I mean, again, I listened to Jordan, Limiting Factor, as well on this sort of stuff. He's good at this, and he's thinking. I think, for QuantumScape, it's years still until they have the finalized product, and then they've still got to ramp up.
Yeah.
So I think he was talking something like 2030 until that's a thing. But then just imagine what Tesla has by then for batteries.
Yeah.
So solid state may not be necessary. Maybe if they got great energy density, it might be for different applications like planes.
Mm. VTOL. Yeah.
So yeah, so what we need something like 400 watts per kilogram for aircraft to be feasible electric, right?
Yeah.
So and maybe that would be the application it goes in. I can't see the likes of suddenly Volkswagen depending on this technology. I know they did that in their battery day presentation, or power day, whatever it was, saying that the QuantumScape in 2025 will supply us our batteries and we'll have, I don't know, 1,000-kilometer range vehicles or whatever. But I can't see that happening.
Mm. And I do like the diversity of the probability of something like that popping up soon enough. But I think that's what smarter minds than me are saying, like you, that the marginal difference might not be enough for it to warrant a total strategy shift on Tesla's end.
And still the ramping up as well. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like Tesla are making batteries that can be built the quickest, like, because we need so many batteries, so many batteries, and they've got to be built as quickly as they can. And that's what Tesla are doing. They're building them in numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of the question that everyone's been asking in the chat, and we kind of talked about this off here a little bit, uh, conspiracy theory about December 9th and the amount of numerology going on and hints from Elon saying, adding up the numbers when he tweets things to add up to December 9th. What are your thoughts on December 9th? Do you think there's any validity to that? And you talk about self-fulfilling prophecy, if you want to highlight that, or what's Lee's opinion on this?
Right. I mean, I haven't been focusing on this too much, to be honest, but I guess the main thing everyone's hoping for is this stock split, right?
Right.
That's what we know, that stock splits, we all make 50% quickly on the stock, right? And we are approaching a similar price to, well, we have been anyway, to what it was last time when we got the split. And if there's a run up for it and everyone's thinking like self-fulfilling prophecy, it might occur, and then it would occur. I mean, it's possible, especially when we see Q4 numbers and Berlin opening and Texas opening and 4680s coming out. There are so many events ahead of us right now, more Hertz orders, whatever. I don't know. I mean, it could be cool to maybe announce the compact car would be cool,
Hmm.
on something like that. But I don't think. I don't know. I mean, we have had cryptic Twitters from email tweets and from Elon in the past, right? And shares are underappreciated and all these sorts of things. So, or I think the stock price is too high.
Right.
So, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him, but I don't like to speculate on necessarily. So what are your ideas? It could be.
I think because it's so obvious, I wonder if Elon's like, "There's no way we can let this happen," right? If it's so public that everyone and their mom thinks something's gonna happen, can Elon really let something happen materially on that day? Just from like a perspective, or a perception point of view. Don't know if that's something that he even cares about, to be honest, though. We all know what Elon thinks about the SEC. Um So, I mean, I would say I'm torn. I think before I did see some. Now I see kind of craziness in terms of tying in anything that he does ever in terms of on Twitter into 12.9. Um, I saw Anti-Corruption
Some people
Day.
can be pretty far fetched, like reaching some conclusions, and like like it's pretty funny,
I love
but
it. I just love the narrative and how it's almost bringing people together to it's kind of free marketing again, right? When we talk about free marketing and Tesla, it's kind of bringing the whole Tesla investorship community together to and yes, there's some very like against 12.9 people out there talking about there's no way that anything's going to happen. I I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I'm not expecting anything to happen, but if it does, I obviously I'd be happy if it's a
yeah, I
stock
mean,
split.
I have options for February, like I was saying. So anything that happens over that time is all good for me, you know. But I'm really liking February options right now. There's just so
Hmm.
many events ahead of us that you know, even if few of them happen, it's got to be a big deal. So, but these Q4s, deliveries, and financials are going to be good. You know,
Hmm.
that's why I want February. So because you know it's probably going to be, I don't know, 25th to 28th of January. The financials get released around that sort of time.
Yeah.
So got to make sure you cover that.
Yes, you cover that, cover Austin, cover Berlin, very likely already producing and delivering by then, potentially 12.9. What else is
Yeah,
there
a
between
potential stock split, you know,
the two?
actually happening. Also, let's not forget this EV credit as well. You know, the EV rebates coming in. I mean, that is huge. It's massive, and I know it sucks that you know you got the UAW and the unions involved and hybrids involved, but I mean, let's face it, Tesla are going to take the lion's share of this, in my opinion. I mean, $8,000 or $7,500 off a Tesla
So enough, yeah.
is like what look at demand already in the waiting lists. What is that going to do to it, you know?
Yeah. Uh,
And when you've got a 4680 Model Y coming out as well.
right. And just devil's advocate to the EV rebate, that's going to be effective January 1. So
Yeah.
any weakness potential, do you think, in your opinion, in quarter 4 from people pushing their deliveries out?
I mean, I think we've heard that Tesla are trying to they're canceling the orders now if they don't execute them soon enough. And I think some people don't care probably, and they don't have to wait any longer. It's I just had to wait, you know, two or 3 weeks for my Tesla, and
Oh, wow.
painful waiting, even that shorter period. I like having to wait 6 months. I'm
Oh,
sure there are plenty of people who would be happy enough just to pay the extra
yeah.
just to get it now, you know.
Gotcha.
But
Hertz will pay
yeah,
for it.
yeah, right. And you know, even the Pepsi semi coming out as well, maybe
Mm,
that's huge as well, you know. Um, and I just think there's just so many potential events in one small period of time that I mean, the asymmetric investment potential on options. I mean, there's no reason it couldn't potentially push up to over 1,500 a stock price, you know, which is going to be good.
wow. Yeah, February is awesome. The only caveat there is, and it's very likely that Tesla's going to report earnings by last week of January. Sometimes we see companies when they're doing 10Ks
Yeah,
delayed a little bit extra, but I still think
yeah.
that first week, what is it, that February 7th is the options chain?
Oh, okay,
Um,
I got 18th, I think, February
oh,
18th, I
okay.
think.
Yeah, then you should be, yeah,
just
just in
just
case.
in case. Yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
then definitely it's in there.
but yeah, I think historically, I don't recall Tesla going into February for the earnings. I think it's always been. I
Yeah,
think maybe 29th was maybe the latest, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. But you just never know with
but
holidays and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, true. But usually with good news, they do tend to bring it out early, and I'm expecting good news as well. Yeah,
Zach Kirkhorn did say expect a little bit of a lower margin though this quarter. Are you plugging that in to potentially lowering the expectations on margin because it was like 14% operating margin last quarter?
oh, are you from operating margins or not gross margins?
Well, I think did he not say both might be a little bit lower from the factories?
I'm factoring in. My bull estimate was from 30.5% to 31.5%.
Yeah.
because we have price rises. But although when you take those price rises back to when these people likely ordered, you're probably only looking at the price rise for the Model Y in Fremont when it was only like $1,000 extra than what we'd already had.
Yeah.
Whereas, it's going to take a couple more quarters
Yeah.
until these 20% price increases actually start kicking into the margins.
Mhm.
And that is all profit. 20% more increase on price. And not only that, you have to factor in that's also, although the waiting lists are growing, but the waiting lists are growing at times when they're going to be ramping up as well. So, you've got adding to Texas and Berlin on top of that, right? And all the extra ramping up in Shanghai. Yet, so they're making more cars and they're raising the prices, and the demand is still rising. The waiting list is still rising. So that is phenomenal, really.
Mhm.
So those margins will eventually kick in. So
Oh,
yeah, I was expecting slightly higher margins. Also, you've got more Model S coming in. Obviously, they're going to have higher margins. Maybe they might be down a little bit from Model X, maybe because they're not making enough of those. Because remember the first quarter when the Model S refresh came back, the margins were down a little. They were actually running at a loss to begin with because they weren't making enough.
yeah.
But yeah.
But what about also supply costs increasing, right? With everything. Like we don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, there is that potential as well. I mean, but hopefully they had locked in those costs earlier,
Mm.
and it's only lately that they've been raising the prices because they've been going up. So yeah, right. We'll have to see, I suppose. But
But bullish
um,
nonetheless in terms of execution for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, basically it's going to come down to what is really important is these delivery numbers, really, in the end, all the production numbers, really, I should say.
Production. Yeah.
How many they can really make, because we know they can sell them all. That's not an issue. We know
Eventually,
every
yeah.
car they make, they can sell, and if they can't, then there's so much margin there they can just reduce the price a little bit, and then the demand goes up. It's that simple.
Absolutely. And what's your? I know TSLA came out today, I think, on Twitter, and he said 926,000 is his 2021 estimate for the year.
Right,
Um,
great.
do you have one in terms of estimate yet?
I think I can't recall what it was. I think it might have been a little bit higher than that, at least for my
Okay,
bull one.
nice.
I think we've, for production numbers anyway, I think we've got to be over 300,000 for this quarter,
Wow.
which I think if, especially if some of this Shanghai stuff's true with the Model 3s,
Okay.
we got to be, I mean, we could, I think I've even run models up as high as 360,000 if
360.
the,
Wow.
if this, I mean, we're going from 800 M3 Model 3s a day to 2,000, but I mean, this might mainly only be for December, and December's holidays as well.
Mm, yeah.
Don't know how much of November it was ramping up, so I try to weigh it all in. But yeah, I'm thinking 300,000 is looking pretty minimal at this stage. I think it's going to be above that it could be above that by quite a bit, which the market is not going to expect, and they're going to, I'm hoping, like, after some of these events kick in and we see some of these Q4s, and eventually that stock price might hit escape velocity at some stage, and people start doing some of the same math that I've been doing and working out, hey, these margins are going to get pretty good. I'm actually doing a whole model right now on what the Model Y margins could be in Texas,
Mm,
and they're looking pretty good.
yeah. Absolutely. Well, everyone hit subscribe on Lee's channel for that. That's awesome. It's super awesome to talk to you because you bring a lot of the fundamentals to the table where you can spit out these numbers about margin and engineering and manufacturing. So really awesome to have you on, Lee, on the channel, and maybe we can make it a recurring thing.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. You too. It's been great.
Yeah, awesome. And everyone go check out Lee's channel if you haven't already, Tesla Economist. Put it into YouTube. I'll throw the link in here in a second. And thanks so much, Lee, for coming on. And hopefully next time it'll be a green day when you're able to come on.
Yeah. That'd be great. Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks, Yushu.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.
Take care.